Hey, it's Kannon. Welcome to OHP Uncut. These are our raw, uncut, unedited interviews for the Open House Party radio show. And today, Ben Barnes, putting out an album. We're going to talk about his music. And of course, you know him from Shadow and Bone and Chronicles of Narnia. He's been in so many things and he's so good. And his answers are really like in-depth and thoughtful, not like cheesy, over interviewed kind of answers you get sometimes with, certain pop stars. I'm not going to name any names, but go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. That's one way you can win our virtual meet and greets. We do those with some of the biggest artists out there, and you can get on Zoom, meet your favorite artists, interview them. And the only way you can do that is if you're subscribed to the channel. So please click subscribe and like this video, share it if you like it. And you will, of course, because it's Ben Barnes. I mean, I can't F it up too bad. Enjoy.
The OHP Uncut Podcast with Kannon.
What's up, man?
Ben Barnes, how are you?
Oh, nice to see you, Kannon. How's it going?
Good. General Kerrigan, the Darkling, the evil mother that you are. But you're like the nicest guy in the world in real life. It's kind of weird, man. How you been?
I'm good. I'm all right. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Everybody's
excited. You're releasing music. And I mean, I know you're excited. You said you've been waiting 20 years for the opportunity to release your own music. Why did it take so long?
That's a very, very, very good question. I think it's a combination of kismet, opportunity, time, and so it's just, I think honestly the main factor is this idea about sort of stepping into yourself and feeling like you might have a voice and something worth saying with it. I think I grew up doing a lot of Sinatra tribute concerts and Stevie Wonder soul nights, and then obviously through my acting career I've played sort of Americana, sort of train hopping folk singers, and always doing impressions of different types of musicians and singing like different kinds of dudes and different genres. And I think all that was something I loved so much, but it sort of spins you around and makes you wonder what's your sound? What do you sound like when you take all the layers off? It's a bit like when you're doing acting work and you're like, who am I when I take off this costume, this General Kerrigan cloak and the authority, and I take it all off and we all go out for dinner and whatever. Like, who am I then?
Yeah.
And I think it was even more highlighted with the music, because I always feel like good music, whatever that means, is music that speaks to you. When music speaks to you, has this authenticity to it and a purity to it and a purity of purpose. And honestly, I just think some of us, take a while to kind of get really comfortable in our own skin and settle into who you are. And I think that's sort of such a big part of making music that you can feel proud of, I think.
You said you're waiting for the right reasons. Speak about those reasons. What are the reasons that now is the time? Like, has something occurred in your life? Were there relationships, or did something happen that made you say, I need to really get this out?
Well, I think, I'd be lying if I said that the pandemic didn't have something to do with it, in terms of just giving you that sort of freedom of space and, the time. I think most people, spent a lot of that time to consider their identity and their place in the world, and where do we fit in? And when this is all over, what is it that we want to prioritize and spend our time on? And when we have those, when we finally get to sit opposite people, what do we want to talk about? And I think that actually led to some quite important things kind of happening in the world, on a sort of, social justice level and a reform level and all of that. And for those of us who are, maybe aren't quite that bold in the way we attack things, I think, for me, kind of finding something joyful, finding something soulful, finding something universal that people, when we talk about putting music out in the world, we talk about sharing it. It's something that you can kind of share in, and you talk about like a release. And for me, you're right. It's been such a long time that, and I think, not only in terms of, not 20 years of not putting out music. When I tried to do it about 20 years ago and it didn't quite go sort of according to plan, I sort of shifted away from it, but also 20 years of relationships and broken hearts and full bursting hearts and all of these kind of things. And it was sort of it was a release. It's exactly that. You release the music, you get it out there. And I actually, when the first song kind of hit Spotify and Apple Music and all of that, I kind of breathed out, because I was like, you know, I've been wanting to do this for so long and no one can ever take it away. You know, I will always be someone who wrote songs and shared them.
Man, I can see the joy in your eyes when you talk about this. It shines through the screen, man. I love it.
It feels honest. And I think, you know, I love doing what I do as an actor, and I love playing in that world and like putting on these coats of these different people and trying to understand people in that different way. But this is something that is it's personal, and there's such an honesty to it. I think when you spend your life sort of pretending, lying essentially for a living, you know, to then sort of do something which feels like you're telling the truth feels like a really good thing.
Now, that's interesting. I would think a lot of actors might find that intimidating or difficult. It's just not what they do. But the way you're talking about it, it was a release. It's what you've been wanting to do the whole time. So
yeah, it's funny because I'm so useless when I have to speak in front. I can ride off on horses naked in front of people. I can sort of like sit there gurgling in blood. I can pretend to like have sex in front of a crew of people. I can do any of that in someone else's sort of like mindset, no issue. But if you ask me to like stand up and say thank you at my own birthday party, or like say thank you to like a crew at the end of a shoot, where I like clam up, I freeze up, and I don't know what to say, and I kind of have like this weird like introvertedness when it comes to like doing that. And so I think, doing something like this where you can do it through kind of something lyrical that you've sort of expressed in a way that means something to you, so through tunes that you can be proud of, through things that sort of mean something to you, then it does feel good to sort of let go of it.
Was there a lot of like personal relationships that went into this? I want to read this. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'm just going to put this out there and let you know what it says. I found this interesting. Here's an article that says there are actors who keep their personal lives private, and then there's Ben Barnes, who takes privacy to a whole other level, but now kind of not. I mean, you're not really revealing who the songs are about, but I'm sure your personal relationships have played a part in this music, correct?
Yeah, I mean, of course. Yeah, I think it was so I was quite young, when people started sort of interviewing you, and I just always found it really bizarre that people would go, and how is your relationship with so-and-so going? And you would think, what's that got to do with you? But that's weird. What's that got to do with this film? Right. It just always struck me as a sort of bizarre thing. It's never something I've been particularly interested in other people. But of course, I know that, that kind of stuff is kind of interesting. Obviously we all animals crawling around the planet, we're all fascinated how everyone else is doing it, and is doing everything.
Very good point. That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah.
That's I think what's curious about it for me. But I think you've got to protect, some part of that. But actually, I think I was sort of overcautious about, because one of the most beautiful things in the world is that we all have the capacity to feel exactly the same things. When you feel grief, you feel the same way I do when I feel grief. When you feel like ecstasy, you feel it's the same. When you want to just get up and dance on a table, or whatever, like you feel the same. That same kind of buzz from whatever it might be when you succeed at something, when you're playing sport and you hit the ball out the park or whatever, and you that's that same adrenaline rush that you could feel. I can feel that too, and I think sort of sharing those things, and of course there are lots of personal relationships. There's stuff about relationships of mine that haven't worked out how I've wanted them to. There's stuff about relationships that I was hopeful about for too long. There's stuff about my relationship with my dad. There's the song about sort of life advice and how people sort of take that, and you sew in little things from different kind of connections you've had in your world, because the way that I've related to people in the moment in life is that's everything that I am. You stitch all those things together, and that's who I am as a person.
Have you gone out of your way to be private about your personal life, or is it just?
I think initially in the beginning I was, 20 years ago, I certainly was. I just didn't want to like talk about how I felt about things, honestly, for the same reason I didn't release music, which was that I didn't know if anyone would be interested. And I thought this can only end in being mocked or whatever. Like, I just felt like it wasn't interesting. And I think my folks, my mum works in, still is a brilliant sort of like relationship psychotherapist. And she was always like, you got to keep something about those kinds of intimate relationships for yourself, because otherwise they're not just between you and that person.
Do you go out of your way to like not post about it, or to not be photographed together, or what links would you go to keep these relationships private?
I mean, I don't think it's about like avoiding anything in particular. It's just about not, I wouldn't like share and post about, my life in that kind of way. I don't do it with my family or my friends or romantic relationships. I just, and some people use kind of social media to sort of diarize their lives and share in that way. And that's amazing. How I do it is I take characters that are in shows and scripts and I take little pieces about my own life or how I felt about something or how I do something, and I inject it into those characters, or I write songs about it. And I think actually, this set of songs is actually much more intimate a thing to share, because I share how I felt about certain moments. Now, you might not have the context of those moments necessarily, but sharing how you feel about a moment to me is much more interesting and important than maybe what led to that moment or who you were with in that moment. And so, for me, that's an even more sort of raw thing to share.
Deeply personal. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. It's personal. Exactly.
Of course, people are going to be reading between the lines when the EP comes out, and it comes out next month. What's the date?
It comes out October 15th.
Okay, cool. Songs for you. Now, let's talk about fan questions. We've got a lot of them. I'm only going to do a couple because you've been generous enough with your time. We appreciate it.
No, you're all good. You take your time.
Valen says, what excites you the most about sharing your music with the world? I guess we've kind of covered that. It's sort of a release for you personally.
Yeah, but it's about, I've always said that like films are just a collection of scenes until someone else sort of sees them, and then it becomes a film as they experience it and react to it. And I think obviously you can write a song and it will be a song at home, but for me, it doesn't become what it's sort of like meant to be, in a way, until somebody else, and this is the other reason that I don't think it's important, like necessarily like which song is about who, maybe in real life, like so many of the Beatles songs are about relationships they have, but no one listens to them like that. You think, well, who's that person in my life? Oh, wow, I'm feeling sad about this. But you're not feeling sad on behalf of, Ben the actor or Ben the singer. You're feeling sad because you had a connection in your life that felt like that, or you have a connection in your life that feels this way, and you relate to something in it. If it's a detail, if it's one line in it, if it's a chord, and that's always the way that I kind of listen to music. So I'm most excited about sort of people listening to it and feeling a certain way. Obviously only one song is out at the moment, but the amount of messages saying, this is encouraging me to feel free and just to be fearless in my creative endeavors. And this song isn't about being free in your creative endeavors, but if that's how it's making people feel, how brilliant is that?
It's that commonality of emotion that makes music so special.
It
really is. You were talking about the song that's out now, and that's 11:11, and a lot of people are wondering what the inspiration behind that song was. Talk about that.
I think it's one of those things, there's this thing, Baader-Meinhof syndrome, which is one of those things where if someone tells you about something or you learn about something from someone, then you suddenly feel it and see it everywhere. Like if someone, mentions a movie to you that you'd never heard of, then suddenly the posters are everywhere, or whatever it might be, or a word that you're like, oh, I've never heard that word before. And then suddenly everyone's using it. That's that. And for me, that was that. It was sort of someone explaining that mirror number 1111, which obviously looks so symmetrically kind of pleasing, is like a number you're supposed to, like, if you see that's the time you make a wish.
Absolutely.
You make a wish for someone. And then I found myself doing it. I found myself like, I should make a wish. Like you would when you blow out the candles on a birthday cake. I will, I have no kind of connection to anything kind of spiritual or nothing, any of that sort of claptrap. I pay it no heed. But at the same time, you still make a wish when you blow out your birthday candles, don't you? And there's like no real reason to. And I feel the same way about that. When I see that it's 11:11, I'll sort of stop for a minute and make a wish for someone. And so it was just one of those little like details of that you that you put in a song that is, again, it's like a little thing that is personal, but it's more meaningful in terms of just like generosity of thought, you know, like putting out positive things into the world, which is not, whilst again, this is one of those things when you put out music, when I was 19, I was like, it's got to be cool, it's got to be edgy, it's got to be this, but that's not particularly me necessarily. So, you know, that might be, you know, putting out something that feels sort of joyful and positive and soulful and hopeful. Those things are things I want to be and are the kind of man that I am. So that's how the music sounds. You know, when I played this stuff to some of my friends before I released it, they were like, you know, I love that the music sounds like you are as a person. And I was like, that's a good thing.
By the way, at 11:11, what do you find yourself wishing for the most?
I try to not wish for myself for anything. So I'll just it will just be whoever pops into my head at that moment, and I'll wish something for them.
I love it, man. Emily said, if you could resurrect one of your dead characters, who would it be? And do you think any of your dead characters deserved a different ending? That's a good question.
Do you know what? I've died a lot in stuff, pretty gruesomely sometimes. And the thing that I try to do is that sort of, we talked about that sort of like Russian doll character thing that everyone's got, like everyone can be everything. So even if a guy is like a psychopath, like on The Punisher, he's like a, you know, psychotic, murderous, you know, guy, I try to scratch away till you find the reasons that someone acts that way, and you find their kind of like, their like, you know, their abuse, you know, when they were young, and the things that they are trying hard to be better at. I'd probably say Logan, my character on Westworld, because he was just really fun to play for me. Like, he's such a sort of like ball scratching, you know, hat tilting kind of like dude that's just kind of swaggering about. And I loved that everyone else on that set was like trying to figure out the meaning of life, and I'm, you know, trying to figure out where the next, you know, woman is coming from. Essentially, that's the only thing on his mind, and that's kind of it. That kind of like just coming straight from the groin and gut and heart, just living life that way is a really fun way to kind of play a character. And then you know, in the second season, I got to kind of see why he was that way, and I've started to feel a bit sorry for him. And then you never really see like what happens to him, but it's talked about. And Ed Harris actually tells you what happens to him, which I think is pretty cool. But I think I just feel so sorry for him, really. And I think he could have maybe done better and been better. I think everyone can always, there's always like hope for everyone to be better. Yeah, I'd like to see what you could do with him, what kind of man he'd sort of grow up to be, really.
You said he could have been better, and you spoke about like scratching away at like the reasons behind, you know, why villains did what they did. And how do you get that as an actor? Like, if you're just looking at a script, I mean, it's a made up character. How do you get that kind of thing? Obviously you have to portray it the way you do.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, especially in the case with Westworld, because they wouldn't tell you anything, you know. Right. I would be begging Evan Rachel Wood to tell me what happens in the next episode, let alone, you know, what the backstories of the characters were. But I did sort of, about the second week of filming, I went up to the showrunner and I went, so why does everyone else have a second name and Logan doesn't? What's that? What's his second name? And Lisa Joy, one of the showrunners, just looked at me and went, and wandered off. And I was like, oh, there's something here. There's something. And, you know, obviously it wasn't until the second season, which I wasn't even supposed to be in, that that you find out his name's Logan Delos, and Delos is the family that owns the theme park of Westworld. But I had this idea in my head that he sort of came from something to do with the park, and maybe he just, like, you know, you never, you know, when babies aren't douchebags. I mean, they are. they exclusively are, actually. But you know, they're not. You know, none of us are born that way. And
that might be the quote of the century, right there. By the way, yeah. Babies are not douchebags. You heard it here.
That's really good. But none of them come out that. You know, none of us come out that way. Something makes you that way, and it's often not someone's fault. That, you know, the reasons that we act up are usually things that need nurture, need addressing, need love, need patience. And you know, when you get a call saying, do you want to come back on the second season, and delve a little bit into this character's, sort of life and relationships with their family and stuff. And, you realize someone doesn't feel connected to anyone, doesn't feel loved, doesn't feel seen, then you're like, oh, okay, I understand. And when I was playing the first season, I was like, there's reasons he's this way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to play and have the best time, but there's something underneath it. So I think you just try and sort of like put yourself in that place.
That's how you've taken your art to the next level, man. One more question. This is from Deborah. Of course, it's about season 2 of Shadow and Bone. What can you say about that?
Well, there are books, so I suppose you can go and read them, and then you can.
I think she meant like, is it filming yet, or when?
No, I know, but I mean, you could then be very disappointed that which bits in the books don't make it in, and very excited about which bits do. I think they're going to sort of shake it up a bit in terms of what happens in the stories a little bit. I'm hoping we go back beginning of next year and shoot. And I'm excited to see where they take it, actually, because I was really proud of the first season. I love playing that character. It's good to be the guy who's kind of like running the country, in control of everything, who everyone's afraid of. So that's a fun thing to play. But he'll be that character will be in a different headspace when we go back. But I know that all the cast are really excited about, because with the pandemic and stuff, he's being stretched out so long between seasons. I think we're all very, very keen to kind of get back into that world and into.
When is that happening, by the way? When do you go back to filming?
I think beginning of next year. We don't have a firm date yet.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, it's Saturday night. What are you going to do tonight, personally?
I'm filming a Guillermo del Toro horror show. So I was in a graveyard with rain until 5 o'clock this morning.
Wow.
So I'm going to go back to bed. Rock and roll, baby.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you for joining us. I mean, it's been an honor. You've been so generous with your time. We appreciate it so much. We're going to play 11:11 on the radio show.
Amazing.
And,
I love it.
Remind everyone the EP comes out October
15th. I've never heard my song on the radio. I have to tune in.
Yes, open house party. We're live all across the United States and Canada. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, brother.
The OHP Uncut Podcast with Kannon.